At my daughter's graduation party, she announced, "My stepdad bought me a car. My real dad never did anything." I smiled and left. The next morning, her college fund was empty and the gift car got repossessed. My ex-wife has been calling nonstop. I, 47M, never thought 18 years of sacrifice would end with those words echoing in my backyard, while 50 people watched my daughter humiliate me at her graduation party. The day started normal enough. I'd been planning this party for weeks, coordinating with my ex-wife to make sure everything was perfect for our daughter's high school graduation. Despite our messy divorce 3 years ago, I'd always put our daughter first. Every soccer practice I drove to, every late-night homework session, every college application fee I paid without hesitation. All of it was for her. I arrived at my ex-wife's house that afternoon with 3 bags of decorations and a catered spread that cost me $800. My ex-wife greeted me at the door with that fake smile she'd perfected since the divorce papers were signed. She mentioned that her new husband had prepared a surprise for our daughter, and I should prepare myself for something special. The guests arrived around 4. Extended family, friends from school, neighbors, all there to celebrate. I mingled, took photos, and felt genuinely proud watching our daughter in her cap and gown, surrounded by people who loved her. For a moment, the bitterness from the divorce faded, and I remembered why I'd fought so hard for joint custody. Then came the speeches. My ex-wife stood up first, giving a tearful tribute about watching our daughter grow into a beautiful young woman. Standard stuff. A few family members shared memories. Then my daughter stood up, wine glass in hand. Apparently, her mother thought it was appropriate for an 18-year-old to drink at her graduation party. She started by thanking everyone for coming, mentioning how grateful she felt for all the support. Then she gestured toward the driveway where a shiny red Honda Civic sat, with a giant bow on top. My daughter's voice carried across the silent backyard as she announced that her stepfather had surprised her with the car that morning. She went on about how generous he was, how he always came through for her, how he understood what it meant to really provide for family. Then came the knife. She looked directly at me while speaking to the crowd, explaining how nice it felt to finally have a father figure who actually did things for her, who showed his love through actions instead of just promises. She said her stepdad bought her the car because he knew her real dad never did anything meaningful for her. 50 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Some looked shocked, others uncomfortable. A few relatives who knew the truth about how much I'd sacrificed looked genuinely angry on my behalf. My ex-wife's face had gone pale, but she didn't correct our daughter or stop the speech. I felt every emotion hit me at once. Rage, humiliation, heartbreak, betrayal. This was the child I'd raised, who I'd never missed a birthday for, who I'd paid child support for religiously even when it meant eating ramen for dinner. The child whose college fund I'd been building since she was 3 years old, depositing money every month even after the divorce when my own finances were tight. But I didn't explode. I didn't cause a scene. I smiled. I stood up calmly, walked over to my daughter, and gave her a hug. I told her congratulations on graduating and that I hoped she enjoyed her new car. Then I collected my jacket, said goodbye to my relatives, and left. The drive home was surreal. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from family members asking if I was okay, but I ignored them all. I had planning to do. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and made 3 phone calls. The first was to my financial advisor. The second was to the bank that held the car loan I'd co-signed for my ex-wife's husband 6 months ago when his credit wasn't good enough on its own. The third was to my lawyer. See, there were things my daughter didn't know about her precious stepfather's generosity. When he'd approached me 6 months ago asking me to co-sign for a car loan, he'd spun it as wanting to surprise his stepdaughter for graduation. He claimed he'd been building his credit, but needed a co-signer to get approved for the payments he wanted. Being the pushover father I apparently was, I'd agreed, thinking it was a nice gesture and that it would make our daughter happy. What I discovered that night was that he'd never made a single payment. Not one. The loan was 60 days behind, and the bank had been trying to reach the primary borrower, him, for weeks. As the co-signer, I was legally responsible, but I also had certain rights. My financial advisor confirmed what I already knew about the college fund. Since the divorce, it had been in my name only. My ex-wife had no legal access to it, and neither did our daughter until she turned 21 or until I released the funds for educational expenses. The account had grown to just over $47,000. I spent most of that night staring at my ceiling, replaying my daughter's words. Every sacrifice felt meaningless. Every time I'd chosen paying her expenses over buying myself something nice. Every weekend I'd spent driving to her activities instead of dating or building a new life. All of it dismissed with a few cruel sentences. By morning, my decision was made. I called the bank first. I explained that I wanted to exercise my rights as co-signer due to the primary borrower's default. Since he'd never made payments and had defaulted on the loan, I requested immediate repossession of the vehicle. The bank representative was surprisingly helpful, explaining that they'd been trying to locate the car for weeks. I provided the address where it was parked. Then I called my financial advisor again. I instructed him to close the college fund and transfer the money to my personal savings account. Legally, it was my money, held in trust for my daughter's education. But trust, like respect, has to be earned. The repo truck arrived at my ex-wife's house around noon. I wasn't there to see it, but my cousin who lived nearby sent me a photo of the confused look on my daughter's face as they loaded her graduation gift onto the truck. The timing was perfect. She'd probably been planning to drive it to her job that afternoon. My phone started ringing 20 minutes later. My ex-wife's first call was panicked. She demanded to know what I'd done, screaming about how I was destroying our daughter's happiness out of spite. I let her vent, then calmly explained that her husband had never made a payment on the loan I'd co-signed. I told her that if she wanted the car back, she could pay the missed payments plus repossession fees, or she could contact her husband about his financial responsibilities. She hung up and called back 10 minutes later, this time crying. She begged me to fix the car situation, promising our daughter hadn't meant what she'd said. I asked her why she hadn't stopped our daughter's speech if she knew it wasn't true. The line went quiet for a long time before she hung up again. The third call came from our daughter herself. Her voice was different, smaller, confused. She asked what had happened to her car, and I explained the same thing I'd told her mother. She started to argue, saying her stepfather had bought it for her, but I cut her off. I told her that her stepfather had bought nothing, that I was the one whose credit and signature made the car possible, and that I was also the one whose money had disappeared when the payment stopped. Then she asked about college. I'd been waiting for this question. I told her that her college fund had been closed and that she'd need to figure out her own financing for school. She started crying, asking how she was supposed to pay for college now. I suggested she ask her stepfather, the one who actually did things for her, the one who showed his love through actions. That's when she really broke down, sobbing that she hadn't meant what she'd said, that she'd been drinking and got caught up in the moment. I listened to her cry for a minute, remembering every bedtime story I'd read, every scraped knee I'd bandaged, every proud moment we'd shared. Then I told her that words have consequences, and that her moment of cruelty had cost her more than she'd realized. I said that if she wanted a relationship with me going forward, she'd need to prove that she actually valued what I'd done for her all these years, not just when she needed something. The calls continued for days. My ex-wife went through every stage of grief, from denial to bargaining to rage. She threatened legal action until her own lawyer explained that I'd broken no laws. She tried involving my relatives, but most of them had been at the party and witnessed what our daughter had said. A few cousins actually called to say I'd done the right thing. My daughter's calls were harder to ignore. She'd gone from angry to desperate to heartbroken and back to angry. She accused me of ruining her life over a stupid comment. I reminded her that she'd had the chance to correct herself or apologize at the party, but had instead doubled down on her cruelty. 3 weeks after the graduation party, my daughter showed up at my apartment. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't been sleeping well. We sat on my couch, and for the first time since the divorce, we had an honest conversation. She admitted that her mother and stepfather had been poisoning her against me for months, telling her that I didn't care about her future, that I was selfish with my money. Her stepfather had convinced her that he was stepping up where I had failed, that the car was proof of his superior commitment to her happiness. She'd believed them because it was easier than acknowledging the complexity of our situation. Her mother's house was bigger, her stepfather bought flashier gifts, and she was 18 and stupid enough to think that meant something about love. But the past 3 weeks had been educational. Her stepfather, faced with the reality of his financial obligations, had become distant and irritable. Her mother was stressed about money in a way she'd never seen before. The family dynamics she'd thought were so perfect were cracking under pressure. More importantly, She'd started thinking about everything I'd actually done for her over the years. Not the flashy gifts she could show off to friends, but the steady, reliable presence I'd been. The way I'd never missed a payment, never failed to show up when I said I would, never made her feel like supporting her was a burden. She apologized, really apologized, for what she'd said at the party. She acknowledged that her words had been cruel and untrue, motivated by alcohol and manipulation rather than honest feeling. She asked if there was any way to fix what she'd broken. I told her that forgiveness was possible, but trust would take time to rebuild. The college fund was gone. I'd donated half of it to charity and kept the other half as compensation for years of financial stress she'd never acknowledged. But I was willing to help her apply for financial aid and scholarships if she was serious about taking responsibility for her education. The car situation was more complicated. Her stepfather would need to bring the loan current or surrender the vehicle permanently. That wasn't my problem to solve anymore. She cried again, but this time it felt different. Not manipulative or desperate, just sad about the consequences of her choices. She asked if we could start over, if she could prove that she valued me as her father, not just as a wallet. I told her yes, but that it would mean rebuilding our relationship on different terms. No more taking my contributions for granted. No more allowing other people to badmouth me without consequence. No more treating my love like it was worthless just because it came without flash and drama. Update 1. It's been 2 months since the graduation party, and the aftermath continues to ripple through our family in ways I never expected. My daughter started her freshman year at community college instead of the 4-year university she'd planned to attend. She's working 25 hours a week at a retail job to pay for classes and living expenses. Her stepfather's credit finally caught up with him. Apparently, the car loan wasn't his only financial deception. My ex-wife discovered he'd been hiding debt and missed payments on several accounts, and their relationship has been rocky ever since. The car never got repossessed again because no one bothered to bring the loan current. It's sitting in some impound lot somewhere, accumulating fees. My daughter takes the bus to school and work now, which she initially complained about until I reminded her that I took public transportation for 2 years after the divorce to keep up with child support payments. Our relationship has been slowly rebuilding, but it's different now. She calls me every Sunday to check in, actually asks about my life instead of just updating me on hers. She started paying for our dinners when we go out, insisting that she wants to contribute something to our relationship instead of always taking. Last week, she showed me her grades from her first semester. She'd earned a 3.7 GPA while working and paying her own way. The pride in her voice when she told me was different from anything I'd heard before. She'd earned something herself, without anyone's financial safety net, and it meant more to her than any gift ever had. The most surprising development came from my ex-wife. After her husband's financial irresponsibility became impossible to ignore, she reached out to me with something resembling an apology. She admitted that she'd allowed our daughter to disrespect me because it made her new marriage seem more successful by comparison. She'd encouraged our daughter's criticism of me as a way to justify her own choices during the divorce. She asked if I'd consider contributing to our daughter's education again, not as an obligation, but as a co-parent who wanted to help their child succeed. I told her I'd consider it after our daughter proved she could handle a full year of college on her own terms. The strangest part of all this has been discovering who I am when I'm not desperately trying to prove my worth through financial sacrifice. I've started dating again, something I'd avoided for 3 years because I felt guilty spending money on myself instead of saving it for our daughter's future. I joined a hiking group, bought myself a decent watch, and even took a vacation to Colorado. My daughter noticed the changes when she visited last month. She commented that I seemed happier, more confident. I told her that's what happens when someone stops taking you for granted. You remember your own value. Update 2. 6 months after the graduation party, my ex-wife's marriage imploded completely. Her husband had been lying about more than just car payments. He'd been unemployed for 4 months and hiding it, using credit cards to maintain their lifestyle. When the bills finally caught up with them, he disappeared one night, leaving behind a foreclosure notice and maxed-out credit cards. My ex-wife had to move back in with her parents, taking our daughter with her. Suddenly, the flashy lifestyle that had made me look inadequate was revealed as a house of cards built on debt and deception. My daughter called me in tears the night they lost the house. She apologized again, this time for believing that expensive gifts meant more than reliable support. She'd watched her stepfather abandon her mother the moment things got difficult, and it made her realize what real commitment looked like. I helped them move, not financially, but physically. I rented a truck and spent a weekend helping pack boxes and transport belongings. My ex-wife was humbled in a way I'd never seen before, thanking me quietly for showing up when her husband had run away. During the move, my daughter found a box of cards and letters I'd written to her over the years. Birthday cards, encouragement notes before big tests, letters I'd sent during business trips. She'd kept them all, even though she'd forgotten their existence until that moment. She spent that evening reading through them while we took a break from packing, occasionally looking up to comment on something I'd written years earlier. I'd forgotten most of the contents myself, but seeing her rediscover them made me realize that my influence on her life hadn't been as invisible as I'd thought. That night, she asked if I'd consider letting her move in with me instead of going to her grandparents' house. She wanted to transfer to a 4-year university closer to my apartment, and she thought living with me might help us continue rebuilding our relationship. I told her yes, but with conditions. She'd need to maintain her job and her grades. She'd contribute to household expenses proportional to her income. Most importantly, she'd need to commit to honest communication about our relationship. No more letting other people's opinions poison her thoughts about me. She agreed immediately, and we spent the rest of the summer preparing for her transfer to a state university nearby. She qualified for significant financial aid based on her community college performance and her mother's new financial situation. I agreed to help cover what the aid didn't, but as a loan she'd pay back after graduation, not a gift. Update 3. It's been a full year since the graduation party, and my daughter is finishing her sophomore year of college while living in my spare bedroom. The arrangement has worked better than either of us expected. She's maintained her 3.7 GPA while working 15 hours a week at a campus job. She pays me $300 a month for rent and groceries, which barely covers her actual expenses, but the principle matters more than the profit. She's learning to budget, to sacrifice immediate wants for long-term goals, and to value what she earns through her own effort. Living together has forced us to communicate in ways we never did when she was growing up. We cook dinner together most nights, and those conversations have revealed how much of her childhood I'd missed despite being physically present. I'd been so focused on providing financially that I'd never really asked about her thoughts, fears, or dreams beyond school performance. She's told me about the pressure she felt to choose sides during the divorce, how her mother's bitterness had made her feel guilty for enjoying time with me. She'd started criticizing me as a way to prove loyalty to her mother, not because she actually believed the things she said. The college fund money I donated to charity went to a scholarship program for students from divorced families. My daughter helped me research the organization, and we attended their annual dinner together last month. Seeing other kids struggling with similar family dynamics helped her understand that our situation wasn't unique, and that my decision to close her fund had been about teaching consequences rather than abandoning her future. Her relationship with her mother has stabilized now that the financial pressure is gone. My ex-wife is working full-time for the first time in years and living more modestly with her parents. The experience has made her more realistic about money and relationships. She's even started thanking me occasionally for things I do for our daughter, something that never happened during our marriage. The most unexpected development came last month when my daughter asked if I'd be willing to walk her down the aisle someday when she gets married. She said the past year had shown her what real commitment looked like, and that she wanted her future husband to understand what kind of father she'd grown up with. I told her that would depend on whether she chose someone who valued reliability over flash, who understood that love is demonstrated through consistency rather than grand gestures. She laughed and said she'd learned that lesson the hard way. As I write this, she's studying for finals at the kitchen table while I prepare dinner. She looks up occasionally to share something interesting from her textbook or to ask my opinion about some decision she's facing. These small moments of connection mean more to me than any graduation speech ever could have. The red Honda Civic is probably still sitting in that impound lot, accumulating fees that will never be paid. Sometimes I drive past the lot on my way to work and think about how much trouble that car caused and how much clarity it ultimately brought to our family. My daughter was right about one thing in her graduation speech. Actions do matter more than words. But she had confused expensive gestures with meaningful action flashy gifts with genuine care. It took losing both the car and the college fund for her to understand the difference. Now, when people ask me about parenting advice, I tell them that the most important gift you can give your children isn't money or material things. It's teaching them to value substance over appearance, to recognize real commitment when they see it, and to understand that love without respect is worthless. My daughter learned these lessons the hard way, but she learned them, and that education was worth more than any college fund could have been.